The rain came down in soft silver sheets, the kind that blurred city lights into watercolor. Dr. Alana Pierce, FBI director, sat behind the wheel of her government-issued black SUV, heading home after a late briefing in downtown Atlanta. It was almost midnight. Her security detail had clocked out early. She'd insisted. "I can handle myself," she'd said with a faint smile. She'd spent 20 years leading task forces against organized crime. Driving home alone felt almost therapeutic. At a red light, she reached for her phone. One unread message from her deputy. "See you 8 a.m., Director." She smiled, setting the phone back down. That was when the flashing red and blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She frowned slightly, signaling right and pulling over. Her license plate was clearly marked Gove Fed, her car spotless, signal lights functional. Still, the cruiser stopped close, too close, and two officers stepped out. The first, Officer Daniels, mid-30s, white, stocky, one hand already hovering near his holster. The second, younger and nervous. Alana lowered her window halfway, resting both hands visibly on the steering wheel. Habit, not fear. "Evening. Officers," she said calmly, her voice steady. "Professional." Daniels leaned toward the window, flashlight glaring straight into her eyes. "License and registration." Her tone stayed level. "May I ask what the stop is for?" "Suspicious vehicle," he said curtly. "We got a call about a black SUV matching this description leaving a robbery scene." Her brow furrowed. "I'm an FBI agent. Director Pierce. My credentials are in the glove compartment. I'll reach slowly." He didn't respond. The younger officer shifted uneasily. "Sir, the plate says—" "Quiet," Daniels barked. "Ma'am, keep your hands where I can see them." She froze, then slowly placed her palms flat on the wheel. "Officer," she said, voice calm but firm, "you are making a serious mistake." Daniels's hand tightened around his gun. "Step out of the vehicle." For a moment, the air felt too still, the kind of silence that precedes irreversible choices. Alana's pulse remained steady. She opened the door, stepping out into the rain, hands still visible. She stood under the streetlight, tall, poised, unflinching. Water trickled down her coat, her face illuminated by the alternating blue-red flashes. Daniels aimed his gun now. "Down! On your knees!" The younger officer hesitated. "Sir, I really think—" "Do it!" Daniels snapped. A car passed slowly on the opposite lane. The driver braked, staring. A phone camera rose from the window, recording. Alana met Daniels' eyes. "You're pointing a gun at the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation," she said quietly. "Put it down before you destroy your life," he sneered. "Nice try." The camera kept rolling. The rain fell harder. Then, sirens in the distance. Another set of flashing lights approached fast. A black federal sedan screeched to a halt. 3 men in suits stepped out, shouting, "FBI! Lower your weapon!" Daniels blinked, stunned, his arm trembling. The younger officer froze completely. Alana didn't move. Her voice, calm and cold, sliced through the storm. "I told you who I was. You just didn't want to believe it." The world seemed to pause. The rain, the lights, the disbelief. And for the first time, Daniel's gun lowered, but far too late. The damage had already been done. The video hit social media before dawn. By sunrise, Dr. Alana Pierce's face was on every news feed in America. Not behind a podium, but standing under a storm, her hands raised, an officer's gun pointed at her chest. The caption beneath the clip read, "Police hold black woman at gunpoint. She turns out to be the director of the FBI." At 6 a.m., Alana walked through the marble halls of FBI headquarters, her heels striking in a measured rhythm. Every step echoed, not in arrogance, but in control. Agents parted as she passed. No one spoke, but their eyes said everything. Disbelief, shame, respect. In her office, her deputy, Ethan Cole, a clean-cut analyst in his 40s, waited nervously by the window. "Madam Director, you've seen the footage?" "I was there," she replied calmly, removing her coat, rain still glistening on the shoulders. Ethan hesitated. "The officer's been detained. Internal Affairs opened an investigation at 3:00 a.m. The media's running wild with it. Alana poured herself coffee, unhurried. Let them, he frowned. With respect, ma'am, this could become political. She looked up sharply. It is political. It always was. I just became the proof. On the other side of town, Officer Daniels sat in a gray interrogation room, his hands shaking as he replayed the incident in his mind. Across the table, 2 FBI internal investigators, both his senior by decades, watched him in silence. I didn't know who she was, Daniels said weakly. The older agent leaned forward. You didn't need to. You saw her skin before her badge. By noon, protests had erupted outside the Atlanta precinct. Reporters flooded the streets. The words "Justice for Pierce" trended nationwide, though Alana herself had never asked for justice, only competence. At 2 p.m., the Attorney General called. Alana, he said carefully, this could go either way. You're a symbol now. People are angry. You could press charges, make an example. I'm not interested in symbols, she replied, eyes fixed on the rain outside her window. I'm interested in systems. One man isn't the problem. You'll still have to testify. Then I'll tell the truth, she said. All of it. That night, she returned home to find 2 black SUVs parked discreetly down the street. Protective detail ordered against her wishes. She ignored them and went inside. Her living room was quiet except for the faint hum of the TV. The footage was looping again. Her voice in the rain, calm and defiant. She turned the TV off. Silence. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She answered. Director Pierce? A low voice said. This is Captain Ryan McCall, Internal Affairs. We've detained Officer Daniels pending review, but I thought you should know. He's claiming he acted on a suspicious vehicle alert, one that doesn't exist in our system. Alana's brow furrowed.
Meaning?
Meaning someone fed him false intel. She stood by the window, watching the reflection of city lights in the glass. So it wasn't just ignorance, she murmured. It was intent. McCall hesitated. Ma'am, if this goes public, it already is, she interrupted. Now we find out who wrote that alert. When the call ended, she stared out into the city. Atlanta glowing under the drizzle, sirens faint in the distance. Her face was unreadable, calm as ever, but her eyes burned with quiet calculation. In 20 years at the Bureau, she'd seen corruption wear many faces. Money, power, greed. But prejudice, that was the one enemy that always claimed it was just a mistake. Not this time. She turned off the lights, the office fading into darkness except for the skyline's faint glow. They wanted to make an example, she said softly to herself. Let's give them one. The next morning, she would order an internal review across every police district under federal oversight. And before the week was over, she'd find the name behind that false alert, the one who thought they could humiliate her and, by extension, every person like her. The game had changed. And this time, the director wasn't just defending the Bureau, she was defending the truth itself. The following morning, FBI headquarters hummed with a tension that felt heavier than routine politics. The corridors were quieter, conversations shorter. People weren't afraid of Director Alana Pierce. They were afraid of what she represented now. In the cybercrime division, rows of screens flickered with encrypted code as analysts dug through system logs. Ethan Cole, her deputy, stood in front of one monitor, frowning. Ma'am, he called out, we found it! Alana approached, her heels silent on the polished floor. On the screen was the police dispatch record that had led to her traffic stop. It looked legitimate, time-stamped, coded, routed through official channels. But there was a problem, the origin. It didn't come from Atlanta PD, Ethan explained. It came from an internal routing hub, one we don't use anymore. Who still has access to it? She asked. Only federal field liaisons, and those require FBI-level clearance. For a moment, Alana didn't move. Her jaw tightened slightly. So, she said quietly, someone in our house made that call. 2 hours later, she stood in the conference room before her executive team. Senior agents, division heads, and legal counsel. The air was thick with unease. She placed a folder on the table, flipping it open. A false alert was sent through a retired federal network. The IP address traces back to Quantico. Gasps. A few exchanged glances. Ethan spoke up. "Ma'am, that would require access to the Bureau's route clearance system." "Correct," Alana said. Which means this wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. A senior agent, Mitchell, cleared his throat. "Director, with respect, we can't assume internal sabotage without hard proof." Alana's gaze was sharp. "If this were any other agent, you'd already have half the Bureau tearing through that data. But because it's me, a black woman at the head of a federal agency, you hesitate." Silence. No one met her eyes. "Find who did this," she continued, her voice steady but cold. "And bring me names. Not rumors, not assumptions, names." That night she drove to Quantico herself. No escorts, no press, no entourage. The training grounds were empty. The building's quiet except for the hum of servers. Inside the network security room, she found a single light on, and someone sitting there. It was Special Agent Derek Vaughn. Mid-40s, clean-cut, one of the Bureau's top cybersecurity liaisons. She'd mentored him once. "Director Pierce," he greeted with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're working late." "So are you," she replied evenly. "Mind telling me why your credentials accessed a dead server?" Vaughn leaned back in his chair, feigning calm. "You know how the Bureau is. Old systems, bad cleanups. Probably a glitch." "Glitches don't issue active police alerts," Alana said. "Especially ones about my vehicle," he smirked faintly. "Maybe someone wanted to see how you'd handle being on the other side of the badge." Her eyes hardened. "That's not a test. That's an abuse of power," he shrugged. "Power's just perspective, ma'am." Before he could say more, Ethan stepped in from the doorway, flanked by two internal affairs officers. Vaughn's smirk faltered. Alana's voice was quiet but razor sharp. "You've compromised federal systems, endangered law enforcement, and used race as a weapon inside the Bureau." "You can't prove intent," Vaughn snapped. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You forgot something. The entire dispatch line was backed up to federal cloud surveillance. Every keystroke you made, every line you rerouted. You didn't just trip a wire, Agent Vaughn. You set off the alarm." His face went pale. The officers moved in. "Agent Vaughn," Alana said calmly, "you are under arrest for data manipulation, obstruction of justice, and misuse of federal authority." As they escorted him out, he turned back once. "You'll make enemies for this, Director." "I already have," she replied. "The difference is I don't hide behind a badge to do it." Hours later, Alana stood alone in the empty hall of Quantico's operations wing. The faint hum of servers filled the silence. She stared at her reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, steady hands, a leader worn but unbroken. Her phone buzzed, a message from the Attorney General. Vaughn's arrest leaked. "Press wants a statement." She typed her reply. "Tell them this isn't about one man. It's about a system that let him think he could get away with it." She slipped the phone back into her pocket, then whispered to her reflection, almost to herself. "They wanted to test my patience. Instead, they proved my point." The lights dimmed automatically as she walked away, her shadow long against the wall, like a soldier leaving a battlefield not yet done fighting. The morning sun cut across the skyline like a blade, sharp, golden, unforgiving. Outside the J. Edgar Hoover building, a crowd of reporters surged behind barricades, microphones raised, flashes erupting with every step FBI Director Alana Pierce took toward the podium. Her black suit was immaculate, her posture unshakable, her expression unreadable. She had faced cartel leaders, terrorists, and politicians with vendettas, but nothing felt heavier than what she carried now, the truth about her own institution. "Director Pierce," a reporter shouted, "is it true the FBI was complicit in the fake police alert that targeted you?" Alana didn't flinch. "One man exploited an outdated system. That man is now in custody." Another voice cut in, sharper. "But that man worked for you, ma'am. Does this expose corruption inside the Bureau?" Her jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. Then she met the sea of lenses and faces with steady calm. The FBI was built to protect justice, but justice isn't static. When it bends, we correct it, no matter who's responsible, the crowd murmured, unsure whether to applaud or attack. But Alana didn't stay for approval. She stepped down, flanked by agents, ignoring the chaos behind her. The message had landed. By noon, she was back in her office, the blinds half drawn against the light. Ethan Cole stood across from her desk, holding a stack of reports. "Vaughn's confession matches your theory," he said. "He got authorization codes from someone higher, a deputy director, but he's not talking." "Not yet," Alana said. "He will." She opened a folder marked Internal Ethics Committee, restricted. Inside was a list of names, old allies, mentors, even the man who'd once recommended her for director. The realization hit like a quiet betrayal. Vaughn wasn't working alone. He was part of something older, something designed to keep people like her from ever reaching this chair. "Ethan," she said slowly, "run cross-checks on every internal promotion tied to this network. If they rigged access for him, they've done it before." He hesitated. "That could mean dozens of senior agents. Some have been here 30 years. "Then it's about time someone looked." At 9 p.m., Alana walked through the empty operations floor, her heels echoing between cubicles. On one desk, she noticed a young black analyst working late, Agent Nadine Brooks, mid-20s, sharp, focused. Nadine looked up, startled. "Director!" "Sorry, I didn't know you were still here." "What are you working on, Agent Brooks?" "Just cleaning up data from the Quantico leak, ma'am." Alana nodded. "Don't apologize for working hard. Apologize only if you stop asking questions." Nadine blinked, unsure if it was advice or warning. Alana smiled faintly, at a rare softness. "Keep going. We'll need your kind of eyes for what's next." At midnight, her phone buzzed again. A private call. The screen showed blocked ID. She answered anyway. A familiar voice came through, low and controlled. Deputy Director Harold Quinn. "Alana," he said, "you've made your point. Vaughn's in custody. The Bureau's credibility is bleeding. Let it end here." Her voice stayed calm. "It ends when the system's clean." He chuckled. "That's naive. Systems don't get clean, they adapt. You dig too deep and you'll break the one thing you're trying to protect." "Then maybe it deserves to break," she said. A pause, then Quinn's tone hardened. "You're a political appointment. Don't forget who put you there. You think you can rewrite the Bureau's culture in one lifetime?" "No," she said, staring out the window at the Capitol's lights. "But I can make sure the next woman doesn't have to start over from zero." She ended the call without waiting for a response. An hour later, Alana sat alone in the dark. The city spread beneath her like a restless ocean of light. On her desk lay two items: her father's old police badge, tarnished, cracked at the edges, and a handwritten letter he'd left her years ago before passing. The badge means nothing without the person behind it. Justice isn't the uniform. It's the choice you make when no one's watching. Her eyes softened. She placed the badge next to her own, side by side, past and present, flawed and redeemed. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, but Alana didn't move. She simply whispered to the empty room, "Different battlefield, same mission." And somewhere deep in the Bureau's database, her orders executed automatically, hundreds of names flagged, accounts locked, clearances revoked. The system wasn't clean yet. But for the first time in years, it had started to bleed honesty. The next morning, the Bureau didn't wake up to order. It woke up to panic. Across the country, senior agents found their logins suspended, access revoked, files locked behind new encryption keys, signed only under one name: Director A. Pierce. In her office, Dr. Alana Pierce stood by the window, coffee untouched, watching the skyline shift under the pale morning light. She'd made her move, and now the machine was screaming. "Ma'am," Ethan said as he burst in, clutching a tablet, "every division chief is calling. You just froze 20% of the leadership database." "Correction," Alana said evenly. "I froze the people who abused it." "They're furious," he said. "You've just cut off men who built this Bureau." She turned, eyes sharp. Then maybe that's the problem. They built it for themselves. Ethan hesitated. This could start a civil war inside the agency. It already did, she replied. I'm just ending it. By noon, the press had caught the scent. Headlines flashed across networks. FBI power struggle. Director locks out top brass in overnight purge. Pierce's crackdown. Reform or revenge? Alana didn't give interviews. She issued one written statement. Accountability does not weaken institutions. It saves them. But inside the Bureau, the pressure built like a fault line. At 3 p.m., the emergency board convened. Every regional director connected via encrypted feed. Deputy Director Harold Quinn appeared on the main screen, his tone clipped and venomous. Director Pierce, he began, you've single-handedly destabilized one of the most powerful agencies in the world. You've gone beyond authority. Alana didn't blink. Authority doesn't mean immunity, Harold. He smirked. You think you're a hero, don't you? You'll go down in history as the director who burned her own house down. She leaned forward, voice steady as stone. If the house was built on corruption, it needed the fire. The line went silent. Several faces on the monitors looked away. Then Quinn spoke again, quieter now. You think you're untouchable because the country sympathizes with you. But when the politics turn, you'll be alone. The system will outlast you. Alana smiled faintly. Maybe, but it'll remember I fought back. She ended the call before he could answer. At 8 p.m., she met Ethan and Agent Nadine Brooks in the operations center. The lights were low, monitors flickering with live security feeds. Ethan spoke first. You realize what you've started? Vaughn's network wasn't isolated. We've uncovered funding trails, private contracts, political donors, off-book surveillance projects. This is bigger than we thought. How big? Alana asked. He turned the tablet toward her. A list filled the screen. Names, corporations, senators, lobby groups. At the bottom, Project Blackline. Her pulse slowed. That's a joint intel program, dormant since the 90s. Not dormant, Nadine said quietly. Reactivated 2 years ago. Internal documents listed as an oversight experiment. But in reality, it's been used to spy on citizens, specifically journalists and activists. Alana closed her eyes for a brief moment, the weight settling in her chest. This isn't just corruption, she said. It's surveillance without conscience. Hours later, she drove home under the heavy drizzle. The streets were empty, lights reflecting in the wet asphalt like fading memories. At a red light, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again, she answered. A male voice spoke softly. Director Pierce, this is a courtesy call. Who is this? Let's say someone who used to believe the Bureau couldn't be touched. You've made us very uncomfortable. Alana gripped the wheel. Good. You don't understand, the voice said. You've exposed Blackline. There are people who won't let that stand. Then they'll have to stand in front of me. A pause. Then, you won't see it coming. The line cut. When she got home, her security lights flicked on. Inside, her apartment was dark and still, except for the faint light from her study. She stepped inside carefully, hand instinctively near her sidearm. On the desk sat an envelope. No address, no markings, just a single typed message inside. Even the Bureau has ghosts. You're chasing one of them. Below it, a photo, a grainy image of her father, in uniform decades ago, shaking hands with a man she didn't recognize. But the caption read, Project Blackline, Founding Committee. Her breath caught. She sank slowly into her chair, staring at the image. The past she thought she'd escaped had just opened its eyes. The rain outside grew louder. The city drowned in restless static. And as she looked down at the photo again, she whispered to herself, almost too quietly to hear. Different battlefield. Same mission. Only this time, The enemy wore her father's badge. The next morning, Washington, D.C. was gray and restless, like the city itself sensed something beneath its surface. Dr. Alana Pierce sat alone in her office, the photo of her father still on the desk. His handshake with that unknown man, the caption, Project Blackline, Founding Committee, looped in her mind like a memory that didn't belong to her. She'd spent years building a career that stood on truth, integrity, and transparency, yet here it was, her own blood tied to the very corruption she was fighting. Ethan entered quietly, coffee in hand. "You didn't sleep." "I've slept enough for other people's mistakes," she murmured. He hesitated. "You think it's real?" She turned the photo toward him. "If it's a fake, it's a good one. But the name on that document isn't fake. Jonathan Pierce. He served in intelligence coordination back in '94. Your father?" She nodded. "He died thinking the Bureau was still what it claimed to be. Maybe he was wrong. Or maybe he helped create what it became." Ethan set the coffee down. "We can trace this. Project Blackline wasn't digital back then. Everything ran on paper archives, secured under Homeland Cross files." Alana stood. "Then we go to the archives." By afternoon, she was in a cold, dimly lit storage room 3 floors underground, the kind of place only senior clearance could open. Dust hovered in the air like forgotten history. Boxes lined the walls, decades of secrets labeled only by code. She found it after 2 hours, BLK 1994 initial charter. She opened it with steady hands, heart heavy with restraint. Inside, memos, handwritten notes, surveillance logs, and a list of original committee members. Her father's name was there, but under Liaison for Ethics Oversight. Another name stood beside it, Harold Quinn. Her eyes narrowed. The deputy director, the same man who had warned her to stop digging. He wasn't an outsider to the corruption. He was one of its architects. Back upstairs, Ethan was waiting, tension etched on his face. "Ma'am, we just intercepted an encrypted file from Quinn's office. He's scheduled a meeting with Homeland at 8 p.m. Agenda unknown." "Not unknown," she said coldly. "He's cleaning house." At 7:45, Alana arrived at the meeting unannounced, flanked by 2 internal affairs officers. Quinn was mid-sentence when she walked in. His expression froze, then hardened into something between irritation and fear. "Director Pierce," he said smoothly. "We were just conspiring," she interrupted. "Don't stop on my account." The room went still. A dozen officials stared as she tossed the file on the table. The photo, the documents, the signatures. "You built Blackline. You weaponized surveillance against the very citizens we swore to protect. And you did it with my father as your shield." Quinn's mask didn't break. "Be careful, Alana. You're trespassing on history you don't understand." She stepped closer. "Oh, I understand perfectly. You hid behind patriotism to justify fear." For the first time, his calm cracked. "You think exposing this makes you righteous? You'll destroy the Bureau. The people need to believe in something." "They don't need to believe in lies," she said. He leaned in, voice low. "You're naive. Systems don't change, only faces do. You'll tear it down, and they'll build it again without you." Alana stared at him for a long moment, then said softly, "Then I'll burn the blueprint too." She turned to her team. "Agent Cole, execute full seizure protocol. Every Blackline document, every linked account, every trace in the archives, seize it under federal authority." "Effective immediately," Quinn's voice thundered. "You don't have that authority." Her eyes met his, unblinking. "I just did." The agents moved. Papers scattered, phones buzzed, alarms began to ping across the Bureau's secure network. The sound was chaos wrapped in justice. By the time she returned to her office near midnight, the building was silent again. The storm had passed, but the air felt changed, cleaner somehow. She stood by the window overlooking the Capitol, the reflection of her father's badge faint in the glass beside her own. Ethan entered quietly. "Quinn's in custody. The files are locked down, but people are asking what comes next." Alana didn't turn. "The truth comes next. And after that?" She exhaled slowly. "After that, accountability. No more ghosts, Outside, lightning flashed once, illuminating her silhouette against the glass, the shadow of a woman who had faced down the machine that raised her. "Different battlefield," she whispered. "Same mission." The thunder rolled over the city like applause, soft, distant, but real. Dawn crawled over D.C. like a tired truth, bleeding pale light across the city that had spent the night pretending it could still hide. Inside the Hoover building, the hum of computers was constant, relentless, a mechanical heartbeat pulsing beneath the walls. Director Alana Pierce stood in the Situation Room, a folder of signed orders under her arm. Today was the day she dismantled the last skeletons of Project Blackline. "Ma'am," said Ethan, stepping forward, "every server tied to Blackline is isolated. We're ready to erase the network." "Not erase," Alana corrected quietly. "Archive. We don't destroy the truth. We preserve it, so it can never hide again." Around her, a dozen analysts waited, fingers hovering over keyboards. Her voice was calm, deliberate, the tone of a commander who had already accepted the cost. "On my command. Director, if we do this," one of the techs said, "we'll expose not just Blackline, we'll drag other agencies into it. Military, homeland, private contractors. That's the point," she interrupted softly. "We don't clean half a wound," Ethan nodded at the team. "Execute." The room erupted into keystrokes and scrolling code. On the central monitor, data began collapsing in real time, encrypted nodes blinking red, then disappearing one by one. Old emails, unauthorized surveillance lists, payment trails, all now redirected to a single federal vault under Alana's authorization. Within 20 minutes, Blackline was gone. Not deleted, but disarmed. At 9:30 a.m., a press conference was called without warning. Reporters flooded the hall like a wave of anxious curiosity. Alana walked to the podium, no notes, no entourage, only conviction. The cameras clicked like nervous applause. "Last night," she began, "the Federal Bureau of Investigation completed a full internal audit of its digital operations. During this process, a classified surveillance network known as Project Blackline was exposed. Its purpose was to monitor American citizens under the guise of counterintelligence." She paused, eyes scanning the room. "It was wrong. It violated everything we stand for. And as of this morning, it no longer exists." A reporter called out, "Director, were you personally connected to this program?" Her answer came without hesitation. "My father was. That's why I had to end it." A murmur swept through the crowd. Shock, awe, disbelief. "Are you saying your family?" "I'm saying that no legacy is above accountability," Alana said firmly. "Not his, not mine, not this bureau's." The room fell silent. By noon, half the country hailed her as a reformer. The other half accused her of treason. Senators demanded hearings. Networks debated whether she was a savior or a traitor. But Alana didn't watch. She was already on her way to the memorial wall, the one carved with the names of fallen agents. The air there was still, reverent. She traced her father's name with a gloved hand. Jonathan Pierce, 1957-2004. For years, she'd stood here believing she was carrying on his legacy. Now she understood that legacies weren't meant to be carried. They were meant to be rewritten when they turned wrong. "I know you thought you were protecting the country," she whispered, "but I'm protecting what you forgot to." Ethan approached quietly from behind. "The Senate Oversight Committee's calling. They want your resignation." Alana smiled faintly. "Good. That means the system's working again." "You're serious?" "I didn't fight to keep the chair, Ethan. I fought to make sure it's worth sitting in." She placed her father's badge beside his name on the wall. "Let them vote," she said softly. "Let them argue. I've already won." That night, the city was quieter than usual. The rain returned, light and steady, washing away the tension that had hung in the air for weeks. Alana walked alone along the reflecting pool, her reflection fractured by ripples of water and light. The world would move on, as it always did. The Bureau would change again, as it always had. But somewhere between those reflections and the faint echo of thunder, she found peace. Not victory. Peace. She stopped, gazing at the Capitol dome shimmering under the rain. then whispered the words that had followed her through every battle, every injustice, every shadow of her father's legacy. Different battlefield, same mission. She turned and walked away, her figure fading into the mist. The kind of ending that wasn't a conclusion, but a continuation. The city slept. The fight went on.